Hello, my name is Elisa, and today I'll be talking about the relationship between religion, violence, and the KKK. So, the Ku Klux Klan, or the KKK, was initially founded in 1865 in Tennessee by former Confederate soldiers. Its goal was to resist the Reconstruction and suppress newly freed African Americans' rights. They used lynching, beatings, and other forms of violent intimidation against both black citizens and their white allies. However, they disbanded in 1871 after federal intervention through the Enforcement Acts, which gave the military the right to suppress Klan activity. The second Klan was founded in 1915 in Atlanta by William J. Simmons, who was inspired by the film The Birth of a Nation. He expanded the KKK's focus onto Catholic, Jewish, and other immigrants as well as black people. He portrayed the KKK as defending 100% Americanism and Protestant Christian values. At its peak in the 1920s, it had an estimated 3 to 5 million members, which included prominent politicians and police. It used public spectacles such as parades, cross burnings, and rituals that were associated with Protestant Christianity. However, it declined in the 1930s due to internal corruption and public backlash. The third KKK was revived after World War II to resist the Civil Rights Movement. It carried out violent acts such as bombings, beatings, and murders, including the 1963 Birmingham church bombing. However, the federal government increasingly prosecuted violent KKK activity. In present day, the KKK still persists but in small, loosely affiliated cells and often overlaps with other white nationalist and neo-Nazi groups. Although I will not have time to discuss all of the themes and characteristics today, some of the themes I found in my research that overlapped with class material were fundamentalism, traditionalism, although of course that is related to fundamentalism, religious nationalism, acting out of defensive action due to perceived victimhood, which provides moral justification for violence, a fixation on sacred time, and the idea of absolute truth, which includes a literalist interpretation of the Bible. As we have discussed in class, religious violent movements usually involve a fixation on an idealized sacred time. For the KKK, one sacred time is the founding of America by white Protestants, which they believe makes America first and foremost a white Protestant nation. The belief in American exceptionalism, an undercurrent belief of American nationalists, becomes religious nationalism due to it being believed that America is exceptional because it is favored by God. This further conflates American identity with Christian identity, and for Christian fundamentalists, conflates American identity with white Protestant identity. As we saw with the history of the three KKK clans, they were all rooted in the sense that white Protestant American identity is being threatened either by ethnic diversity or religious plurality due to events like the end of slavery and increased immigration. Due to their belief in the absolute truth of Protestantism, a literal interpretation of the Bible, their sacred text, and traditional values, they feel justified in exerting acts of violence to defend the idea of American identity. One instance of similar religious violence can be seen in Hindutva, which is a belief in Hindu nationalism and establishing Hindu homogeny within India. The main similarity this movement shares with the KKK is their belief that their country ought not to be secular or pluralistic, but adhere to their religion, in this case Hinduism and Protestantism respectively. They have carried out similar acts of violence against racial and religious minorities, including lynching and church burning, via the justification of this belief. A differing example of religious violence is the conflict between Sunni and Shia Muslims. The main difference is that this is sectarian violence, meaning violence within different sects of a shared religion, whereas the KKK is rooted in white Protestant supremacy and targets external groups that do not fit this identity. Another difference is that Sunni-Shia violence is rooted in differences over religious disagreements, whereas the motivation for the KKK's violence is motivated largely by racial hierarchy. The KKK is motivated by religious nationalism, and therefore the scope of its violence is primarily limited to the United States, whereas Sunni-Shia conflict is global. So, although many would like to believe that the KKK is simply a dark chapter in American history, this just isn't true. Although the influences of the KKK have significantly decreased in number of supporters, the membership estimates as of 2016 were still 3,000 to 6,000 members. Although KKK violence is more isolated, white supremacist groups are still active and often aligned with neo-Nazis and other far-right extremist groups. Further, the ideological legacy of the KKK persists today in modern political and religious rhetoric. Core KKK tenets like white Protestant nationalism and religious xenophobia are expressed in modern movements and political figures. Scholars believe that the 2016 election was a turning point because 81% of white evangelicals voted for Donald Trump, who promoted KKK-adjacent rhetoric like anti-immigrant campaigns. The enmeshment of evangelical religion and politics was further seen by the endorsement of Donald Trump by prominent evangelical leaders like Franklin Graham, further conflating Christian identity with American nationalism. Scholars have also interpreted MAGA symbolism as modern artifacts of white nationalism. As discussed earlier, American exceptionalism is conflated with Christianity, and this conflation continues on in modern day. Despite mainstream and widespread shock over racism, anti-immigrant sentiment, and religious intolerance, their rise is clearly a continuation of America's past that is enmeshed with KKK ideology. Thank you so much for watching, and these are my sources. Thank you.